moving toward what we see now is the complete breakdown of withdrawal in Afghanistan. It's important to, of course, always remember that there's never a good time to leave, and there's never a good way to leave. The United States, and this is, I think, getting back to the whole issue of the last 20 years, never fully understood Afghanistan, never understood the complexities of the situation. I think that the deal that was attempted in the closing overs of the Trump administration, bringing the Taliban to the negotiation table in Doha, was certainly a step in the right direction, because for far too long, the Taliban were considered to be personas non grata. They were just simply left out of the process. And to simply then exclude one very significant part of the equation has led to not only the chaos of today, but has unfortunately been emblematic of a pathology by which the United States operates. The Taliban demonstrated two things. They demonstrated their savvy, and they demonstrated their patience. And in many ways, what happened last year in Doha was an exercise in patience. It would be perhaps incomplete to look at this as just a 20-year issue. American involvement with Afghanistan actually goes back 42 years to the Soviet invasion. And there we, of course, were waging a proxy war with the Soviet Union by supporting the Afghan freedom fighters, or the so-called Mujahideen. When it comes to questions which, of course, tend to be so important in the perspective of how Americans look at issues, it's always, it seems, a matter of wins and losses. Well, if that's the case, if we're looking at this as a game or some kind of a conflict, the traditional way of then approaching it is to define what is the conflict itself and what are the desired outcomes. Here, when it came to Afghanistan, there was a bit of an ambiguity about it. When American intervention then began, it was ostensibly to get rid of Al-Qaeda, and then also those who were, of course, enabling or harboring them. At a certain point, that seemed to work. Al-Qaeda was on the run, or perhaps, to put it in a different way, Al-Qaeda then diffused into other areas. Those things then mean that the rules of engagement changed, and Afghanistan was then arguably no longer the principal theater where the conflict facing the United States would be. What it did indicate, though, is that the United States had not only other plans, but it seems as though those were the higher priority than was the so-called war on terror, and that, of course, was Iraq. This is just yet another chapter in a longer narrative arc of American aversion to engage militarily, and certainly in a way that would be much more decisive. As a result of that, and if there are the lessons to be learned, and this is going to, of course, take several decades to unpack because it's still relatively fresh and raw, the lessons of Afghanistan and the lessons of Iraq over the last 20 years has shown that the United States, at least from the standpoint of public perception, is not willing to support categorically wars that don't seem to have a clear and coherent mission, that cannot be linked directly to some identifiable harm that the United States has suffered. It became very difficult to then make an argument to the American public that sustained military intervention and occupation was the way to go. That's something that has not been lost on either adversaries to the United States or even American allies, that the role that the United States has traditionally had for the past 75 or so years since the end of World War II of being the global policeman seems to be an era that is coming to an end.